In the heart of the African savannah, under a blazing sun that turns the golden grass into waves of fire, George Carter, a veteran wildlife ranger, found himself in a situation he had never imagined. His hands were tied to a rough tree trunk, the ropes cut into his skin. His mouth was dry. His heart pounded like a drum. He tried to recall what had happened. The last thing he remembered was tracking poachers near the Saru's plains, trying to protect a herd of elephants from traps. Then, a sharp blow to the head. Darkness. Now he was alone, completely exposed. The savannah seemed alive. Every rustle of grass, every distant bird call felt like it was whispering warnings. And then he heard it. A low growl, deep, reverberating through the ground. George froze. It wasn't a hyena. It wasn't a leopard. It was something bigger, something far more dangerous. From the shadows of the tall grass, a massive lion emerged. Golden eyes locked onto George, muscles rippling under tawny fur, every step deliberate, every movement powerful. George's first instinct was panic. His second was to remember the countless stories he had heard of humans who never returned after crossing paths with lions. But this lion moved differently. Curious, calm, almost aware. George's mind raced. Could it be the same lion he had saved months ago from a poacher's trap? The thought made his heart skip. Could an animal actually remember? Could this king of the savannah know him? As the lion stepped closer, the tension was unbearable. George felt the heat of its breath, smelled the wild musk of its coat. Every second stretched like an hour. Then the lion stopped. It watched. It was deciding. George realized that in this moment, everything hung in balance. His life, the lion's choice, and the wild, unpredictable savannah. Golden light bathed the scene. The grass whispered. The wind carried a story of survival, courage, and an unexpected bond between man and beast. As the two figures, one human, one king of the wild, stood ready to act, George had no idea that the next few minutes would change his life forever. George Carter was no ordinary ranger. For 10 years, he had devoted his life to protecting the wildlife of the African savannah, walking the thin line between life and death every day. On that morning, he had set out at dawn, the golden sun barely lighting the horizon, tracking a group of poachers who had been terrorizing the Saru's plains. Their traps were cruel, their intentions deadly, and countless animals had already fallen victim to their greed. George had faced danger before, but something in the air that day made his instincts scream caution. The grass swayed gently in the early wind, hiding secrets beneath its waving blades. Every snap of a twig underfoot, every whisper of rustling leaves made him pause, heart hammering. He scanned the surroundings with trained eyes, noting broken branches, footprints, and the faintest signs of human intrusion. He had been here many times, knew these plains intimately, but today felt different. The silence pressed against him, heavy and suffocating, as if the savannah itself was holding its breath. Then came the ambush. A sharp, sudden blow to the back of his head threw him off balance. Pain exploded through his skull and darkness swallowed him whole. When he regained consciousness, the sun was high overhead, scorching, and George realized he was tied to a sturdy tree, thick rope cutting into his wrists and arms. The ground beneath him was dry and harsh. His mouth was parched. Every muscle ached. There was no radio, no weapon, no chance for immediate escape. He scanned his surroundings desperately. But the poachers had vanished, leaving him to the merciless wilderness. Their plan was cruel. They hadn't killed him outright. They wanted nature to finish the job, to let the predators and harsh environment decide his fate. Despite the pain and fear, George's mind remained sharp. He forced himself to remember every detail of the path he had taken, every landmark, every clue. He reminded himself of his years of training, of survival skills honed in dangerous situations. His heartbeat slowed slightly as he focused, trying to stay calm. But anxiety gnawed at him like a persistent predator. The savannah carried on around him. Birds swooped high above, their cries piercing the heat, and the wind stirred the tall golden grass. It looked peaceful, almost serene, but George knew better. Nature could be both beautiful and merciless. Every sound could signal danger. Every shadow could hide a predator. His eyes darted to every movement, his ears straining to catch the faintest hint of approaching threat. In the midst of all this, George felt an odd awareness. He was not entirely alone. Something massive moved just beyond his vision, subtle yet unmistakable. His training told him it was no ordinary animal. It was something bigger, something regal and powerful. Fear surged through him, but beneath it a spark of hope flickered. He had faced impossible odds before. The wind shifted suddenly, carrying the scent of dust, sweat, and power. Ranger George Carter froze. He knew that smell. Something big was near. The golden grass rippled, and from it, a shadow emerged. At first, it was just movement in the sunlight. Then the shape formed. A lion. Massive. Muscles rippling beneath a thick, dark mane, golden eyes locked onto George's. Every step was silent, deliberate. The air trembled with his presence. Tied to a tree, George's instincts screamed run, but the ropes held tight. He'd heard the stories. None of them ended well. Yet in that gaze, he saw more than hunger. There was recognition. A memory flashed. 6 months earlier, a lion trapped by poachers. George kneeling in the dirt, cutting through wire, whispering softly until the creature calmed. Could this be the same one? The lion tilted its head, studying him. Then, a low growl rumbled through the savannah. But it wasn't for George. Hyenas lurked in the distance, eyes glinting in the tall grass. The lion turned toward them, body tense, standing like a shield between George and danger. For a moment, man and beast shared an understanding. A memory of pain, of trust, of survival. The lion's tail flicked once. The sun sank lower, shadows stretching long across the plains. George didn't dare move. The lion stepped closer, close enough that George could feel its breath, see the scars beneath its mane. Their eyes met and everything fell silent. No roar, no violence, just a choice. In that golden light, George realized the savannah had its own laws, and sometimes its fiercest kings were also its protectors. As the lion turned and disappeared into the grass, George Carter, bruised, bound, and breathless, and understood. He wasn't the hero of this story. He was the guest in the kingdom of the wild. 6 months earlier, the plains were quiet, golden light stretching over the horizon. Ranger George Carter was tracking poachers when he heard a cry, sharp, desperate, echoing through the grass. He followed the sound and froze. A lion, massive, proud, caught in a steel trap. The wire had cut deep into its leg. It roared in agony, shaking the earth beneath its paws. Most men would have run, but George didn't. He moved slowly, speaking softly, voice calm and steady. "Easy, boy. I'm here to help." The lion thrashed, golden eyes blazing with fear and fury. George's heart pounded, but he didn't waver. He knelt beside the creature, trembling hands working the wire loose, inch by inch. Every sound, every movement could have been his last. Hours passed under the burning sun. The wire finally gave way with a snap. The lion stumbled free, leg bleeding, breath ragged. Still, George stayed. He cleaned the wound, wrapped it carefully, whispering the whole time. The lion's growls faded to heavy breaths, its gaze softening just enough to trust him. When the great beast limped away into the plains, George watched in silence. He knew something unspoken had passed between them, a bond beyond fear, beyond predator and prey. Now, months later, as George faced a lion in the wild once more, towering, golden-eyed, powerful, he realized it was him. The same lion, the same eyes, the same unspoken recognition. And in that moment, George understood. Survival in the wild wasn't just about strength or skill. It was about respect, trust, and the fragile connection between man and beast. As the setting sun painted the savannah in gold, the lion looked upon George not as prey, but as something far rarer, an ally, a friend, a man remembered by the king of the wild. Back in the present, Ranger George Carter struggled to breathe, heart pounding as the lion stood before him, massive, golden, and commanding. The late afternoon light painted the savannah in gold, every blade of grass swaying like it feared to move. Then, a flicker of motion. 3 hyenas crept from the shadows, their eyes glinting with hunger. They had come for an easy kill. But the lion, the same one George had once saved, stepped forward. His body tensed, mane bristling, chest swelling with power. A low growl rumbled from deep within, rolling through the air like thunder. The message was clear: this is not your prey. The hyenas circled, testing him. George's pulse quickened. He could feel the ground tremble with every step the lion took. Yet the great beast didn't attack. He guarded, watching both the scavengers and the man behind him. Then came the roar, a sound that shattered the stillness. Deep, thunderous, echoing across the plains. The hyenas froze, tails dropping before slinking back into the tall grass. Silence returned. George's breath trembled. The rope still cut into his wrists, but his heart swelled with awe. The lion turned to him, eyes burning with memory, not of prey, but of a shared past. Slowly, the lion stepped closer, each movement heavy with purpose. And then, the unthinkable. The great beast lowered its head and began to chew the ropes, tugging gently, carefully, until the knots loosened. George couldn't move. He could only watch, disbelief mixing with gratitude. The ropes finally gave way. He fell to the ground free. The lion stood over him, not as a threat, but as a guardian. Their eyes met, and George saw it clearly now. Recognition. In that moment, he understood the Savannah's truth, that mercy was its rarest law, and respect its deepest bond. The lion stepped back, mane glinting in the sunlight, and with one last look, powerful, knowing. Eternal turned and disappeared into the golden grass. George whispered into the wind, "Thank you, my king." And as the sun dipped below the horizon,
to protect the lions,
man and beast were bound forever, not by fear, but by trust. George Carter barely caught his breath when the air split with a sound that froze his blood. Gunshots. The poachers had returned. He turned toward the sound, heart pounding. But before he could react, the lion stepped forward, massive, golden, unyielding. The sunlight caught his mane like fire as he growled, deep and resonant, a living wall of power between George and danger. The poachers broke through the grass, weapons raised, and stopped dead. What stood before them wasn't prey, it was the king of the Savannah. The lion's eyes burned with fury and command. Then came the roar, a sound so deep, so earth-shaking, it rolled through the plains like thunder. The ground trembled. Birds scattered. The poachers flinched in terror. From the tall grass, more lions appeared, lionesses, cubs, and 2 young males, forming a half circle around George. Their synchronized growls filled the air, a chorus of primal justice. The poachers' courage shattered. They dropped their guns and ran, swallowed by the golden waves of grass. Silence returned. The Savannah, once filled with gunfire and fear, was now ruled again by nature's balance. George stood frozen, chest heaving. The lion turned to him, steady, calm, regal. In those golden eyes, George saw something extraordinary. Memory, recognition, and perhaps even gratitude. He understood then that the bond they shared had transcended the laws of the wild. He had once freed the lion, and now the lion had freed him. The great beast gave a slow nod, not of submission, but of understanding, before turning toward the horizon. His pride followed, their silhouettes fading into the sunset. George whispered, voice trembling with awe, "Long live the king!" And as the wind carried the echo of the lion's roar across the plains, George knew he would never again walk the Savannah as just a ranger, but as a man forever changed by the mercy of its king. The Savannah was silent again, but George Carter remained tense, every rustle of grass, every whisper of wind reminding him how fragile life here truly was. The poachers were gone, yet danger was never far in this vast, untamed land. The lion, golden and majestic, stood nearby, watching him. Every breath the great beast took radiated strength and calm authority. It was as though he were making sure George could stand, could walk, could leave safely. Then, slowly, the lion turned. He looked back once, eyes deep, knowing a final reminder that the wild demanded respect. And then he vanished into the tall grass, swallowed by the gold of the plains. George stood there trembling, alive. His wrists still bore the marks of the ropes, but his heart was full. The savannah stretched endlessly before him, glowing beneath the sinking sun. He had just witnessed something few ever would, mercy from the king of the wild. Hours later, rescuers found him, weak, bloodied, but alive. When they asked how he had survived, George whispered, "A lion saved me." At first, they didn't believe him until they saw the tracks.
Thank you.
Massive paw prints circling the spot where he had been tied. Evidence of a protector. From that day forward, George was never the same. He patrolled the plains not just as a ranger, but as a man who had seen the soul of the savannah, a world ruled not only by power, but by balance, respect, and remembrance. And every evening, when the sun dipped low and the horizon glowed red, George would pause and listen. Sometimes, far in the distance, a roar would echo across the grasslands, deep, steady, familiar. And in that sound, George heard a promise, that courage and compassion could bridge even the wildest divide.